Well, hello! Welcome to another riveting edition of Apostate University. I am your eccentric professor, Fateful Slave. I'm going to skip the whole JW history lesson this week. It's kind of getting old to me. Instead, I thought it would be fun to come up with a short list of questions that I would love to ask a Jehovah's Witness, and I'd like to hear what questions you also would like to ask a Jehovah's Witness under the fictitious scenario that, number one, they'd actually let you ask them and they would listen and also attempt to respond to said question. It's a fictional thing, never going to happen, but let's get started. Oh, and I want you to keep in mind as I'm coming up with these questions, two things. Number one, remember that almost everything reflects the divine character of Jehovah God, especially his creations and his laws. That's another big thing I want you to keep in mind as we go through this. All right, let's get started. Where should I begin? Oh yeah, how about this? Jehovah's Witnesses will firmly state to you time and time again that Jehovah abhors and absolutely despises violence. Well, if that's so, why did he create the dinosaurs? They existed. A lot of them were carnivores. Needlessly so. There was no reason why the dinosaurs had to be carnivores, violently ripping each other's throats out and whatnot. A lot of these, I want you to also keep in mind another thing. Jehovah makes all the rules, okay? Jehovah could have made any fantastic thing he wanted to exist just because he wanted it to. The only rules that exist in this reality are the ones that he came up with, according to JW lore. All right? So yeah, hates violence, creates dinosaurs. Okay, whatever. Also, along the same lines, blood is supposedly sacred, according to the Jehovah's Witnesses. Yeah, all right, so why are there so many species of animals that are constantly trying to suck it out of us every time we go out into the woods? You got leeches, you've got mosquitoes, you've got vampire bats. Constantly there's things in nature or creation that's trying to rip the blood right out of you. And this is no fault of man sinning, okay? Our sin did not affect the animal kingdom. That makes no sense, and there's no JW doctrine to suggest so. So it's a good question, I think. If God's creation reflects Jehovah, right? Why is he breaking his own rules on the nature of how sacred blood is in his creation? Interesting. Also, another weird thing that's always bothered me. What's up with male nipples? Remember, God made all the rules, right? Jehovah God, he set all the rules. He didn't have to do anything. Everything he does must have a reason, right? Because he's an orderly, intelligent, all-knowing, all-powerful God. Why male nipples? Adam and Eve were the first humans, correct? Right? And they were literally created from the earth, from dust. All right? Everything in a man, including the appendix, that's a whole other thing, was there for a reason. Women had, these things to help feed children. That makes sense. But why did Adam have nipples and therefore passing them down to men? It served no function that I know of. Yeah, all right. Spent too much time on that one. All right, now we're going to start getting into some more edgy stuff, a little bit more controversial stuff. What's up with homosexual animals? Yeah, do a Google search on the animal kingdom exhibiting homosexual behavior. Now, as we know, Jehovah hates homosexuality. You can't stand it. However, when you Google it, no species has been found in which homosexual behavior has not shown to exist, with the exception of species that never have sex at all, such as sea urchins and aphis. Moreover, a part of the animal kingdom is hermaphroditic. hermaphroditic, hermaphrodites, truly bisexual. For them, homosexuality is not an issue. I'm just going to scroll down some of these headlines that pop up when you Google homosexual tendencies in animals. Here we have, there are many animal species that display homosexual behavior. National Geographic. Do animals exhibit homosexuality? Yale Scientific Magazine. Recent research has found that homosexual behavior in animals may be much more common than previously thought. Here's another website. 10 animal species that show how being gay is natural. 1,500 animal species practice homosexuality. That's from newsmedical.net. Huffington Post. Hooray for gay animals. 9 species that are also celebrating. You get it. I would take it a step further, and maybe if the kids are watching, plug your ears, cover your eyes, but there's a lot of animals who also masturbate, which is definitely not okay, according to Jehovah. It's a double standard that keeps popping up. God's creation versus what we're supposed to believe Jehovah really thinks about all this. Moving on. Oh yeah, Noah's Ark, since we're talking about animals. 8.7 million species of animals we've identified today exist in the world. How did they all fit in Noah's Ark? Now, keep in mind, 8.7 million species, according to the account of Noah, there had to be 2 of each kind to keep propagating these species. A male and a female had to be taken from each species onto the ark. So you take 8.7 and you double it, 8.7 million times 2, that fit in the ark. It's over 16 million. I can't even. Yeah, all right. Yeah, ask a Jehovah's Witness that and just see what they say. Okay, now let's get into the real stuff. You know, all these have been kind of fun, but why does Jehovah hate women? Especially in the Old Testament. Now remember, God doesn't change, but honestly, if you read some of the verses in the Old Testament, like in Deuteronomy, a lot of the stuff that you're going to see that were the laws directly handed down by God to men, to his people at that time, they would make the average JW today shake and shiver with disgust and revulsion. I'm surprised they don't accidentally stumble upon these scriptures now and then and rethink their entire belief system, because they are shocking. Let me just give you a few examples of what I mean. We're going to go onto the old internet, and there's an article here that brilliantly puts in order a lot of the issues I have with the way Jehovah treated women back in the Old Testament days. And complete hypocrisy is on display at every turn. For one, polygamy is the norm in the Old Testament. A lot of the old Bible prophets, or the old kings that were favored by Jah, had multiple wives and also concubines. These were slaves that were slaves for the purpose of also being wives. Now, laying down with a woman because it's her job, that borderlines on prostitution. I don't know. How much free will did these concubines actually have? Because a lot of the times in the Old Testament, once a man has laid down with a woman, that's it for life. They're married whether she wanted it or not. which also brings in the idea that consent was not a big deal to Jah back in the day. Yeah, sex slaves were a thing. The Bible provided instruction on how to acquire types of sex slaves. They were also war booty, literally conquests of war. Didn't just stay cattle or gold or resources, but also women, namely virgins. You conquered a city, as God's people often did. You got to take home the females and take them as concubines and whatnot. Numbers chapter 31, verse 18. God's servant commands the Israelites to kill all of the used Midianite women along with all boy children, but to keep the virgin girls for themselves. In fact, the law of Moses spells out a ritual to purify a captive virgin before sex. So you got yourself a virgin girl from a conquered city. You want to make her yours the Old Testament way by seizing her and laying down with her. Well, you want to make sure that she's been purified with the ritual first. Jehovah, what are you doing here? One minute you hate fornication, the other minute you got your prophets taking multiple wives, or your chosen people are stealing virgins from war-conquered nations and lying down with them. What's going on here? There's a lot of hypocrisy, a lot of hypocrisy. That sums it up pretty good. Incest was a thing. Okay, Abraham and Sarah, it was said they were half siblings. It's a little weird, but it's permissible, right? Well, how about the time Lot's daughters got him drunk, mounted him. Sorry for the graphic language, but by now I think you should know the kids should be out of the room for this one. Lot's daughters got him drunk, mounted him. Jah rewarded them with babies, male babies, which are much better if you remember in Old Testament times. Since the dawn of humanity, males have always been more favored by Jah. It's another thing, we'll get into it. But yeah, rewards him with babies, male babies, who become patriarchs of great nations. Very prestigious and very well loved men by God came out of an incestual union, lacking consent again because he was drunk. Jehovah's Witnesses, help me out here. I'm a little confused. Can you please answer how any of this is not raising some red flags, okay? These are all reflecting the divine character of the Almighty. Okay. So, let's keep going here. Wife's handmaid. Yeah. Abraham's wife, Sarah, gave Abraham a ton of chicks to lie down with. Because she wanted to give him a son, right? This happened repeatedly. They repeatedly sent slaves to Abraham, hoping to have a child. Didn't really work out, and if you recall the account, finally, after all of this immorality and sex out of wedlock was going down, finally Jehovah's like, there's probably an easier way to do this. I know, I'll just reopen Sarah's womb. Could have done that from the very beginning, but didn't. Finally, he has a child with his actual wife. Remember, God hates fornication and immorality. Sex can only happen between married people. Just remember that. Finally opens her womb. He gets a son, right? And all of that sex with women who were not his wife didn't mean anything, because at the end of this story, if you recall, Abraham ends up sending away all the concubines and all of their sons because he wanted to make it clear that his son with his wife was the one that mattered. He had all the rights to his possessions and his legacy after he died. So all of that was for nothing. It was literally for nothing. God approved of it, was completely okay with it, let it happen, until finally reopening his actual wife's womb. Unbelievable. Okay, it gets darker. It gets much darker, Jehovah's Witnesses. I really need you to see this through, though, and answer these questions, because they're really important. After all, why am I doing this, guys? Why am I doing this? Well, see, here's the thing. There are a lot of religions out there, a lot of faiths and belief systems out in the world today. Jehovah's Witnesses, would you agree with the following statement? Because there are so many belief systems, wouldn't you want the one that you base your entire life on to not have any holes in it? Or even not have very many holes in it? Is that too much to ask, considering you're basing your entire life on this set of principles and ideology? You'd want it to be pretty airtight, especially when considering there are hundreds, if not thousands, of other beliefs and ways of thinking. If you're sticking with this one, it needs to make sense, right? That's why I'm doing this, guys. So with that in mind, let's get into some of the less favorable talking points here. All right, now I really don't like the R word. R-A-P-E. I don't like it. So instead, in place of that word, I'm going to use what the Bible often uses, sees. All right, in the Bible, oftentimes, when a girl is R-A-P-E-D, it replaces that word with the word seized or lied down with her. Okay? So, Jehovah's Witnesses, you would undoubtedly agree with me. Jehovah hates for men to seize women or girls without their consent, right? Not so fast. Let's see if you still believe that after you hear what I have to say, all right? A Hebrew girl who is seized can be sold to her rapist for 50 shekels, which works out to be about $580. He must then keep her because she has been humbled. This is all part of Jah's divine law system laid out in Deuteronomy chapter 22, verses 28 through 29. So, a lot of the defense for these types of arguments from the JWs is that, well, it's a protection to the girl, because, see, a girl who's been seized will have a hard time finding a marriage mate, because back then men just didn't want a girl who had already been seized. So it was a protection. It was a loving protection from the Almighty Jah to set up this arrangement that the man seizing the female then has to purchase her and make her his wife for all his days. Oh yeah, very loving arrangement, except for the fact that it completely ignores the female's consent, her will, what she wants out of life. Is it a protection to her? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe she didn't want to get married. Maybe she wanted to travel. Maybe she wanted to find some place where there weren't terrible laws in place at the time. Oh, okay, well, maybe you're saying, well, that's just the way things were back then. In fact, you'd be hard-pressed to find a society anywhere who treated women better. Yeah, okay, sure, fine. But this is supposed to be God's law, God's standards, God's perfect society that he was setting up by giving the Israelites these laws, these holy, perfect laws. He could have set the standard higher than the rest of the world. He could have made it so that no one would ever be seized without a severe punishment, certainly more than a couple shekels. It certainly doesn't seem as though Jah liked women very much. That's just how I feel about it. It gets worse, okay? Then there's the part of the law where if a man seizes a slave girl, that is, a girl who is owned as a slave by another man, guess what the penalty for such a thing would be? Jehovah's Witnesses, wouldn't you expect that to be pretty severe? Well, you know, it's really not. In fact, the penalty was that the man who seized the slave girl had to go to the tent of Jah and present a ram for forgiveness. A ram. Just let that sink in for a minute. Now, I understand that if you're not that bright, it's kind of easy to miss the broader implications of some of these verses. Let me read it for you, and then I'm going to break it down for you what the broader implications are. Oh. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 20. Now, if a man lies down with a woman and has intercourse with her, and she is a servant who is designated for another man, creepy, but she has not been redeemed or given her freedom, there should be a punishment. Good. However, they should not be put to death, for she was not yet set free. Good. He should bring his guilt offering to Jehovah to the entrance of the tent of meeting, a ram of guilt offering. The priest will make atonement for him with the ram of the guilt offering before Jehovah for the sin that he committed, and he will be forgiven for the sin that he committed. A ram. A ram. The priest will make atonement for him with the ram of the guilt offering before Jehovah for the sin that he committed, and he will be forgiven for the sin that he committed. So the broader implication here is, in case you haven't worked it out for yourself, Jehovah's Witnesses, is that, well, let me just paint what I see in my brain when I read this scripture. I look in my mind's eye to this tent of meeting, and I imagine on a Tuesday morning there being a line of men out of the tent, all of them holding a ram. I mean, just rams and men for as far as the eye could see. You know, as long as you got a ram, you can be forgiven for seizing a slave girl. So to me, it's like the price of seizing a slave girl is a ram. Am I wrong? Correct me if I'm wrong, Jehovah's Witnesses. I need you to correct me here, okay? I'm really disturbed by this information. I need you to set me straight, okay? In fact, I can just see the owners of these slave girls going up to the prophet of the Bible back in those days and being like, you know, can we put like a footnote or an addendum of some kind to this little law here because, I got Jeffrey coming every week and seizing my slave girl. And, well, he just brings you a ram and everything's fine, but it's not fine with me and it's certainly not fine by her. Can we please just do a little correction here for this perfect law of yours? Not saying anything wrong about Jah or Yahweh, great guy, but can we just fix it? It's crazy. In fact, it's really dark, but it's also kind of comical. So you would think that there would be some further information, and I'm just taking this out of context, but it immediately jumps to another issue entirely after the end of this verse. He will be forgiven for the sin that he committed. Verse 23. When you come into the land and you plant any tree for food, you must consider its fruitage impure and forbidden. For 3 years it will be forbidden to you, it must not be eaten. But in the 4th year, all its fruit will be holy for rejoicing before Jehovah. It literally starts talking about fruit as if nothing was messed up or unfinished with that last law. The price pays a ram. Oh. By the way, this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to how much Jehovah appears to hate women, according to his divine laws that were given to the old Israelites back in the day. You could break this thing down. There are so many verses to choose from. How about the one where if a man seizes a woman in the city who's engaged already and she doesn't scream loud enough or resist, essentially, they're both to be put to death because she didn't scream in the city. It's really awful, gross, morbid stuff. But Jehovah's Witnesses, I need you to answer some of those questions for me. Let's take it down a few notches, about 5 or 10%, just lower, because everybody's blood is boiling now. I brought up some things that you're not supposed to talk about. Let's just bring it back just a tad. I have a more comical question. Do we poop in the New World? Yeah, you heard me. In the new system, do people still go number 2? If so, why? Isn't that like a gross and shameful thing? Are we going to magically no longer have like diseases that pop up out of poop? Is it not going to smell bad anymore? There's a lot of shameful processes, not just in the animal kingdom, but in the human physiology that we're always trying to hide because it's gross. For example, this goes back to women a little bit. Women who were menstruating had to be in a tent for like 7 days and they were labeled unclean. All of this was perfectly designed by Jah. Why is he so ashamed of it? Why is it so shameful? Why does it have to exist at all? Remember, he makes the rules. He didn't have to have all these functions happen that are so shameful. You gotta cover them and hide all the time. But he did. Why? Just to sit back and laugh at how ridiculous his laws are versus his own natural creation? Would that make him a troll? He's trolling us. We've been trolled. Jehovah, the epic troller of the universe. All right, guys. I have way more questions than that. All right, one last one. Since we're on the idea that Jah makes all the rules, so why do a lot of his rules tend to cause a lot of conflict that's unnecessary? For example, Why does Jehovah have to destroy the wicked? I've done this a lot in this video, and I really wish I could stop, but it's just so fun. Yeah. Why does Jah have to destroy the wicked? I mean, I get it. He's not doing what he wants, and that makes him so mad. And they're causing other people problems. So why doesn't he just make another planet for all the wicked to go? And like as soon as someone becomes wicked, they're beamed to the wicked planet. And you got the good ones on this one. You got the wicked over there. They're just over there being wicked, and their penance for being wicked is to live a long, wicked life, and everybody wins. I'm not saying that I have better ideas than God, but I mean, it's not bad, right? Because remember, Jah loves all of us, and he hates it when we don't do what he wants, and doesn't want us to die. He doesn't want us to die. We don't have to die. He's got the power to, just do this thing. Why doesn't he? And, the definition of wicked I'm using very loosely here. A lot of the times, the people that Jah deems wicked, quote unquote, just do things that are mildly not biblical, like going back to the whole blood transfusion thing. A person who ate blood or took in a blood transfusion, either one, would lose God's favor and thus be deemed wicked. But, I mean, yeah, it's a weird, creepy thing to do to eat blood. That's obviously weird. We'll put him over in the wicked planet. But people who are just trying to keep themselves alive after a gruesome accident of some kind or a surgical medical procedure, and so they take some blood into their arms intravenously, mind you. It's a very clean process, very sterile, not messy, not gross at all, right? They're just doing it to stay alive so that they can do more godly things, right? So instead of deeming them wicked and destroying them with all the other wicked people, why not just put them on a planet for people to live who just did this one thing kind of wrong? Why does it go straight to death? You did this thing that I really don't like. I hate having to destroy people, but I'm gonna anyway because there's just no other way. I have infinite power and ability, but trust me, there's just no other way. They all have to die in the great day of Armageddon. And that's just how it is. Jehovah's Witnesses, answer me those questions. I got millions of these things. Like sometimes all I do is sit around and think about how ridiculous the entire JW belief system is and how full of holes it is. It's like Swiss cheese. But I would really love to read some of yours down in the comments. So lay them out for me, people. Faithful slave, I'm out.